You're listening to the Conscious Debriefing Show podcast on Anchor FM.
Alrighty. Welcome back to another edition of the Conscious Debriefing podcast. My name is Jason Bett and I will be your host for today's podcast. Right, our lineup. The lineup for today's podcast, the topic is about poverty. I've got three special guests that will be joining me later. Westley, who was on my show a few weeks ago. He's got his own YouTube channel, TheBurnZA. I'll be having Franz. He's a very, very close friend of Wesley's. Also will be joining us tonight, and I'll be having Dillion Willams from Reactionary Opinions. Also another YouTube channel where they also have a podcast like mine, where Westley and Dillion will speak about the same topics that I do, about politics and about right wing and left wing and libertarian stuff. You know, the jibber jabber stuff of the world that makes the world tick. But tonight's podcast will be about poverty, and we're gonna have a deep, in-depth look onto why poverty. Yes, we all know what poverty is, and we're all aware of it. And everyone's got their own opinions. We all share different opinions on how we feel about the topic at hand. But why? Why is it happening, and why is it on the rise? Why is poverty getting bigger and bigger instead of smaller and smaller? Yes, countries like Netherlands, I believe they're closing another 4 prisons. And why? Because their crime levels have dropped. And it's obvious, if you've got a country where crime levels have dropped, it's because of poverty is not existent, which leads to unemployment. The unemployment rate probably doesn't even make up 1%. So these are the type of things that I want to discuss with Westley, Franz, and Dillion about poverty. And so yeah, let's get into it. Let me get the guys on the line, and we'll take it from there. See you in a bit. Okay, guys, Westley, Dillion, are you guys there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, hundreds. Guys, I want to take this time to thank you for coming into my podcast tonight. It's an absolute pleasure. Westley, I've had you on my show before, so special welcome to you. Thank you for joining us again. Dillion, I'm going to hand it over to you. Give a quick, short introduction, and then after you, then Westley can have a turn to also give an introduction on his side.
I will do, man. Hi, my name's Dillion. I am one of the 3 hosts of Reactionary Opinions. We're kind of a sort of Christian sort of podcast. We focus on areas of culture, politics. We spend, I think, more time on on culture and things like that, history, than politics. Yeah. I come from sort of an Eastern Orthodox sort of Christian perspective. I am from Alaska originally, and then I married a local and came over here, and I've been here since 2017.
2017. Okay, so you're still new to the country. Are you enjoying the country?
I am.
Okay.
Just had a Gatsby, so I'm enjoying myself very much.
A Gatsby. Yes, I don't know when last I heard that day. That's in Cape Town. For those that don't know what a Gatsby is, it's like a long roll, but a foot-long roll with chips in and some bologna or ham or cheese.
Yeah.
Am I right?
It's Thanksgiving on a bun is what it is.
Yeah.
It's tremendous. Yeah. We had a full house steak Gatsby with egg, chips, bologna, steak. It was great.
It's lekker. No, just you brought back some memories now, eh?
Yeah. No, that's one of the main benefits of being married to a colored chick. The food is amazing.
It's lekker. Awesome. Wesley, my man, over to you.
Awesome. No, Gatsby's are great. This is going to be an interesting podcast. I didn't know that about Dillion. So welcome to South Africa, Dillion. I'm glad you love Gatsby's. So yeah, my name's Wesley. I have a little modest podcast channel on YouTube called TheBurnZA. I'm a truth seeker, maybe a bit of a self-proclaimed, I don't know, armchair philosopher maybe. I'm a very concerned citizen. And I guess I hope to bring sort of a bit of a reasonable libertarian perspective to the conversation. And I'm an advocate for the non-aggression principle and universally preferable behavior and so on, which is to say secular ethics.
Yeah.
So not a Christian. So this is going to be good, I guess.
Okay, no,
I know.
No, awesome.
And thank you for having me on, Jason.
Awesome, absolute, my pleasure. Look, okay, France, he said he was tied up with something, so I'm hoping he will join us later. Hey, Wesley, I'm sure you'll join us later.
Yeah, hopefully he'll pop in.
So excuse the listeners out there for France not being here, but I'm sure he'll join us. Right, guys, let's get into the podcast. Poverty, you know, it's a global thing. It's not just happening in South Africa, but it's all over. There's something I wanted to share quickly. A picture, a book that was written by Peter Phillips. I don't know if you guys heard of him. He released this book called Giants. I just saw it now, probably about a couple of minutes ago. I want to go into it, and he explains about the wealth in the country. How 80% of the population is people living off maybe $5 or $2 a day. 20% is the middle class, and then how we get to know what the 1%ers are. But poverty, why is poverty on the rise? Could it be because of what I just showed the book, and that because of the wealth that's going in the wrong directions? Why is poverty on the rise? Dylan?
Talking about specifically here in South Africa, or
we can maybe touch a bit on South Africa, but global too as well, yeah.
Well, I think it's sort of case specific depending on the type of country we're talking about. So in the United States for a while, a lot of the problems, you didn't necessarily see a whole lot of poverty, but you saw a stalling out in terms of living standards and stuff for a considerable amount of time. The United States is by no means a poor country.
No, because I mean their unemployment rate at the moment is like what, 3% at the moment.
Yeah, it's gone down quite a bit. But one of the things that some of the problems that you see in the United States are amplified in other areas. And of course, being from there, that's kind of where, my knowledge base mostly derives from. Things related to state intervention, a lot of regulations and stuff that make it difficult to do business, certain capital controls and things of that nature. Depending on the specific country and lesser extents, you see an increase in basically debt financing. So, and a greater and greater proportion of the public and the state's resources is being used to service debt. And in that particular environment, it's kind of difficult to sort of, get your head above water.
Yeah, no, true.
On an individual basis, what's I think it was a line by Adam Smith, what's prudent for the household is also prudent of great nations.
Yeah.
So in Western countries, I think that's one of the main things is in terms of regulation, in terms of political impact, meaning things that could mostly deregulatory things. So you see an interesting case in Spain, for instance, where you cobble together a majority government, but at least it's stable. So regime uncertainty is basically significantly reduced. So people are like, all right, it's not ideal circumstances, but at least we know things aren't going to change overnight. So we could kind of make plans.
Yeah, true.
Businesses, above all else, hate uncertainty, particularly when there's billions of dollars or rands or whatever at stake.
Yeah, true what you're saying there.
And other countries, I think it's a combination of things. Fundamentally, I think third world, for instance, and developing nations, a lot of the governments that ended up taking control, coming from previously as the outsiders or from disadvantaged groups, what essentially happens is once they end up taking charge, they open up the spigots and turn the state into an enormous patronage machine.
Yeah.
And, you know, we all know how that ends.
Yeah, true. Wesley, over to you, my man.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Dillion a lot. I think it is case specific. It's extremely complicating. Obviously, I think it's everything from family, education, values, the economic system. To me, a hell of a lot of it comes down to how free the people are in that system is. I mean, if you look at the United States, so obviously I wouldn't really want to go in. I wouldn't focus too much on the United States because I don't know as much about it. Like I'm, more impacted by the system in South Africa, which is leaning to more sort of centralized state government power, Marxism, and sort of leading to socialism. And that is what I would say is one of the main factors. The NDR obviously is a big thing, and I'm sure we'll get into that.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, for me, one of the big things would just be freedom. Do people have the freedom? How many barriers do they have placed in front of them by a government, by arbitrary rules, trying to equalize everything all the time? I think that's a big stifling thing. And population growth in South Africa is just immense. I think that's a huge thing as well.
Now, I got a picture on the population growth, and I quickly want to share it with you all. But another topic that also incites poverty is education. We just don't seem to have the right education in this country.
Yeah, because the government wants to control everything. See, I'm like the libertarian now. I
mean, the pass rate. What's the pass rate now in South Africa at the moment? 30%, if I'm not mistaken. Dillion?
Yeah,
it's 30%.
It doesn't. It's not good. It's definitely not good.
It worries me.
If you look at those numbers, that's insane.
Just
yeah, it's definitely ballooned.
It's skyrocketed.
I'm sorry to.
No, Byrne, go ahead.
Yeah. So yesterday we were having a chat, and I brought this up, and I think I need to bring it up again because it's a statistic that I haven't really heard any serious politicians, leading politicians, bring up, and that is in sort of 1904, after the Second Boer War, after the British won, we did a census in this country, and found that there were approximately about 6 million people in the country in 1904, and to jump forward about 100 years. We got, 57 million people in just over 100 years. This is insane amounts of growth. And our economy hasn't grown to sustain the amount of people. And where's the poverty? Well, I'd say it's right there. That's
true. But
it's no laughing matter. I don't mean to laugh about it. I mean, it's
not laughing matter, but it's happened. And so as South Africans, we've got a duty to try and uplift this and try, and that's the reason for this podcast. So hopefully that listeners that listen to it can take this into consideration, that we have got a population problem, because there just simply is not enough jobs. Companies are closing down. Standard Bank is going to close another 104 branches now. DSTV is going to retrench what I think last I heard was 2,000 people. The SOEs, the list is just ongoing. And Dillion, coming back to what I was saying about education, you in that field, I mean, in education, give us a shout on that.
Yeah, I think this, as far as the population goes, I'm of the opinion that isn't necessarily the problem. The problem is everything when you have a growing population, but not a way to accommodate them and prepare them for, economy. So my background is in education, as you mentioned, Jason. Before I came here, I had secondary education, and in addition to kind of being involved in small business and various other things, I was a teacher before I came here, and now I'm kind of like a freelance. I'm a hired gun, so basically I teach international students here. Okay. But I do have some experience in Africa. I did volunteer every Saturday in Mitchell's Plain in the Cape Flats at Yellowwood Primary School.
Yeah.
I was shocked kind of by the amount of students who were at ages where they should be. And so what I was doing was I was trying to just sort of, get these kids to learn how to read, basically. And I don't even know where to begin, particularly in communities in areas like Mitchell's Plain. There's just so much. I don't even know where to begin. Just
okay.
Social decay, So
I was about to say that.
So just in terms of everything, the family structures have disintegrated. Gangsterism, drug abuse. So a lot of the kids from these households, they sort of very unstable, unpleasant environments to begin with, and then they're not necessarily being served by the schools that they go to. So they end up becoming entrenched in a sort of hopeless position. And part of the problems with education, I think, are really tied to, of course, as Wesley said, the government in South Africa has not exactly been a bastion of, sort of Asian style, efficient, administered education. And then on top of that, just the social situation has degraded to such a degree that the problems just compounds itself. So fundamentally, in the South African context, when the education is just poor state, and the communities that rely on these schools have simultaneously sort of both gone downhill, and it's just sort of becomes a negative feedback loop.
Yeah, true.
Oh, that's scary. Yeah.
We need education. I mean, this is the economy driver. I like to see it. And Wesley, we spoke a bit about it last night. If we could just get all our students back on track and get the colleges and universities, to push the economy and get our GDP back in the right track. I just don't know. I don't know where we're going. Wesley?
This is really where I would support the Christian sort of core family, the nuclear family. I'm a big fan of Jordan Peterson. I don't know what you think about Jordan Peterson, Dillion, but I'm a big fan of him, and he really opened my eyes to a lot, just the values. And I think a lot of these things, and the statistics show for themselves. If you look at the statistics with single mother parent families, and a lot of these values, before the kids go to school, I think they learn this at home. They see with their eyes. They're taking these things in like a sponge, and if it's broken down in the home, there's a problem. And that's.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely on point. Just roll around through the Cape Flats, you can sort of see common problems. I mean, there's plenty of people who I know, in Mitchell's Plain, Grassy Park, and areas like that, who are doing just fine, but inevitably they're, married, two-parent households, stable environments. They usually have some sort of religious structure, which sort of informs their worldview and helps them make sense of the world. And in those sorts of environments, even in, places like Mitchell's Plain, do pretty well for themselves. You know, they can live comfortable lives. They have a sense of pride in themselves and who they are. And when you sort of undermine that, it kind of just, yeah, I mean, it's not a pretty picture. I'm very much reminded of these sorts of problems, remind me a lot of sort of what happened in the US to specifically Black Americans. So you had a situation for a long time where the government, you know, to put it mildly, was not exactly kind to, but nevertheless, despite that, they were able to maintain familial structure for, you know, from slavery times until the 1960s, basically. The youth unemployment amongst Black teenagers and young people was actually lower than among white counterparts. And then all of a sudden, starting in the 1960s and the Great Society projects, which was basically targeted welfare to the Black community, it just eviscerated everything. So the family structure collapsed. And then, of course, the morals and mindset grow up in changes, and then the value of, you know, education and advancing yourself just cratered. So
yeah, absolutely. And, you know,
very much of the same thing here in South Africa.
Sorry, and I have to bring up, we have to obviously bring up the big elephant in the room, which was the gross social engineering project of apartheid South Africa.
Yeah.
You know, and we were also saying that, you know, I can in a sense, I can really understand, because I can say yes, but all you need to do is you need purpose in your life, and you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, blah 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 blah. I can't even do that sometimes, and I can really sort of see, if I was in the situation of a young person in Mitchell's Plain or in Khayelitsha or something like that, the immense hatred and the immense anger I would feel. Because you have not chosen to be in that situation, and you are in that situation because of a social engineering scheme that was just gross. So yeah, I mean, we have to bring that up.
Of course,
and
yeah.
I don't deny it at all.
I mean, you look at this picture that I just put on you. Your children will follow your example, not your advice. Now, yeah,
talk's cheap.
True. We touched a bit now about your morality, ethics. It all starts at home, and I'm not seeing a lot of this happening in a lot of homes in South Africa, and especially in rural areas and in townships. If you know, this is where probably some special reform program, and again, now that sounds like social engineering. If I'm going to say a reform program must be introduced into rural areas, where the basics needs to be introduced. Then obviously when the child gets to school, he already knows which grounds and which direction he needs to go. And of course, discipline, which is a huge factor, because children today in school just don't seem to have respect for teachers. I mean, I really, really feel sorry for teachers. They go through hell. And I mean, we've seen a lot of clips on YouTube and clips on Facebook. The teachers...
Yeah, and Dylan, have you experienced any sort of violence towards yourself?
No, some guy stole some flip-flops out of my car when he cleaned it, but that was about all.
Okay, so you weren't stabbed. That's good.
Yeah. Nah, I'm good. I almost had an altercation with a guy at KFC once, but that was about it.
Wow, that's all right. You know, back in the liberation days of the ANC, and I spoke to Wesley about this last night. It's some of the political leaders of those days, they said, liberate now and educate later. Now, this is where the Renegade Report on their podcast from this week, where Anthea Jeffrey speaks about how the People's War was introduced into the townships and how everybody just got involved into the war, fighting, you know, liberation and that. But there was no education. There was no direction. Nobody knew where they were going. The main goal,
revolution, man.
Yeah, it was revolution. The main goal was just freedom.
Overthrow the old order, replace it later with something.
Yeah, and ironically enough, that was a Marxist doctrine.
Yeah, of course it was. Of course. So with the EFF with their doctrine and the BLF with their doctrine,
and the ANC,
Wesley,
they're just not as loud about it. They're not as honest, but it's there. I promise you.
No, they're not, because they're using the EFF. The EFF is like a little.
Sexy warriors.
Yeah, they're just using them. They obviously can't do it because they're in the limelight, they're in the spotlight. So they use a political party like EFF to doctrine the youth of today. Wesley, you were speaking about it last night. Wesley?
Yes. No, I'm just trying to think of what angle here. So with the liberation movement and the ANC back in the day, and now we're talking way back. We're talking so the NDR, and I assume that we know what it is. So the NDR is basically the shortest route to socialism. So the whole plan is to basically gain collective ownership over everything, right? Collective ownership over the means of production and the land and everything. And if I was a down and out proletariat, so to speak, or in that sense, I would be like, yes, we have to overthrow the bourgeoisie and all of this. But the thing is that what people don't understand is that it is not collective ownership. It is the ownership by the state. It is centralized power. And when that happens, we know what happens. The experiments have been done. The numbers have been tallied in 100 million dead, and yeah, I don't know how to I guess the question is, how do you teach someone the value of self-ownership and self-responsibility, and then also, as a libertarian, I don't like big social reform, and I don't like social engineering. So for me, it's like a double-edged thing, because on the one hand, I'm like, just give people freedom, but on the other hand, I feel like the scale has gone so far in one direction that it's just going to be chaos.
It's scary, guys. It's really scary. I mean, the left is about collectivism, and the right is about individualism. You know, so which side do you take? I mean, the left has gone so deep and so extremist. Whatever you see on the media today is just not what it is. The concentration that the media is focusing on is just on certain race groups and certain violence. When violence takes place, look what this guy did. But nobody seems to realize what's going on in the rural areas. Black on black violence is real, guys. It's huge. And earlier on, before we did this podcast, I spoke a bit about Tainted Heroes, a documentary that Aaron's Roost directed. Awesome podcast. You guys really need to go into it and watch how the violence erupted. I mean, yeah, where I'm living in Van der Bijlpark, we had the Boipatong massacres. It was crazy, and those were the type of black and black violences that led up to the 1994 elections, where ANC came in.
So, Conscious, I want to actually hear from you. So I was born in '88, and I believe you were born a little bit earlier than that.
Yeah, 74.
So what was South Africa like in '74?
Look, okay, no, well, 74 was still a baby. Okay, as far as I can remember, the 80s.
Yeah, early 80s.
Yeah, the 80s. It's like you read in the books. Whites to the whites and black people to the black people and coloreds, which was wrong, you know. I could remember when I was a child, I played once in the park, and I befriended a couple of black boys, and we had good times. We played on the park, we played on the swings and that, and there was no problem. And the cops rocked up there one day, and they took us by force, and they chased the black kids away, and they took us home. Knocked on the door, my mother answered, and in Afrikaans, they said, you know, teach your children the right way. They must not play with other children, with black children, you know. And when my dad came home, I asked my dad, why? What's this about? Why can't I play with other kids? And my dad told me simply, it's the law of the country. You just got to accept it. If you don't accept it, then they come and lock me up. which was very unfair. Obviously, when 1994 happened and 1995 happened, the World Cup, the Rainbow Nation started. For the first time, South Africans could really unite, you know, and diversity was there. It was awesome. I'll never forget 1995. I was 19 years old. It was good times until 2009. 2009, things just took a dip.
Yeah, the economic collapse, 2008. I was 7 during the 1995 elections, and everyone was happy. I didn't understand what the hell was going on. Like, I didn't have a clue, but I also felt there was this energy and a super positivity. Everything was amazing, and yeah,
it was awesome. After when Mandela became president, it was awesome. There was no more wars. There was no more hate speech. For the first time, everybody was working together, you know.
Yeah, and I guess the question is, what went wrong?
Yeah, what went wrong? Yeah, Dillion, when you were overseas in it, during that phase that we were going through, what did you hear? What's the story you heard?
And South Africa wasn't, in terms of current events, wasn't really much on my radar. I've always been sort of a student of history. That's what I majored in at university. So I was familiar with the Anglo-Boer Wars. I knew about the ANC. I knew about Mandela. But in terms of the day-to-day sort of goings on with South Africa, I really only sort of began to take more of a keen interest after I met Lauren, my now wife. Yeah. So, and then at that point, I kind of and that was about 2015 was when I started really sort of taking note. But kind of by that point, you know, it was sort of late in the game. I sort of missed the glory days, as it were.
Yeah.
And they were glorious. They really were.
Look, they were glorious, and that's why the emphasis a lot these days seems to be focused on white privilege. Because we had education, we were born in a house, we had a golden spoon fed to us, whereby a lot of the unfortunate did not have those qualities. They did not have a house to live in, or a car, or somebody to drop them off. And this is the struggle that we are facing now. A lot of hate speech is coming from it because of the poverty in this country as such. And this is the thing. What can we do? What can we do to get ourselves out of this poverty?
In my mind, I think you're seeing the same thing happen in South Africa that you see in a lot of places in terms of public understanding and messaging, meaning that the world began like last week. Everything just goes down the memory hole. People remember vaguely that things used to be better, but they don't understand why they're bad now, and they don't understand what changed to make things, you know, the way they are. So part of it is, you know, right? So getting on platforms like this and sort of cueing people into these types of things. And, you know, to a certain extent, my own sort of small circle, I've sort of influenced people in some regards and whatnot. But one of the things I'm sort of struck by is sort of the common sense that a lot of South Africans, you know, just normal guys seem to have. You will, of course, unfortunately, you know, people, they'll know things aren't good, and then they'll expect sort of government solutions. But if you talk to, you know, small business owners and even some of my family, you know, sort of blue collar working class people, not rich, but, you know, just common sense, street smarts, you know, they work hard and whatnot. And they understand the problems. They understand. They're like, you know, where's the money going to come from for all these government projects? You know, as a business owner, they need to get off my back, and so on and so forth. So they understand.
Yeah, true. Wesley?
Fundamentally what the problems are, and they sort of know that there's going to need to be practical solutions for them.
True, 100%. Wesley, your take?
You know, when it comes to solutions, I think mine might be sort of a counterintuitive solution. And we're talking about, you know, we've been talking about government projects and government solutions and programs and so on. And I think, and this is obviously because, you know, people aren't cold-hearted, and to say that what the government should do is step out of the business of people sounds very cold-hearted. But I truly believe that if the government doesn't take as much of, just doesn't tax the shit out of people, doesn't have this grand plan that they can just fix everything.
Yeah,
I think when people start realizing that the government isn't the answer, because now at the moment that this is what we think the government is the answer. The only thing we need to do is vote for the right government, vote for the right people that say they'll give us the right amount of free stuff and this and that. And I would say, and as a libertarian, I would advocate for a monarchist state, which basically means that I believe that the only thing that the government should bother themselves with is police, a military, like protection, foreign protection, and courts. That's it. And the rest of it, and everything else, I think the free market will sort out. And the thing that is why it is unpopular, and I understand this, is because it does not advocate for equality. I don't think equality is possible. I think the only way that you can achieve equality is through force, is through coercion, which I think is immoral. So I think if you
won't get it. That's the only thing I'll just add to that. It's this obsession. Equality is one of my least favorite words in terms of people trying to just, they assume that, you know, the same, they have the same outcomes, they have the same family structure, they have the same idea, they have the same ideas and values, the same inherent gifts. And that's just absolutely not the case. It's a very bland, human vision. They assume we're all just interchangeable when we're not, and nor should we be. You know, and I like diversity in the world in the real sense. I don't want feel like Canada, you know.
Yes, and with all of these fighting, look, I believe that there should be people that fight for the, you know, for the down and out, and like maybe the working class need representatives, because maybe they will at the end of the day be taken advantage of or so on. But to have like unions and to fight for ridiculous sort of I mean a minimum wage and so on is actually hurting people. It's hurting people. There are some people that are willing to do an apprenticeship, that are really want to learn, that could be a rocket fucking engineer.
Exactly.
You know? But they don't get the opportunity to do that because the unions keep them from doing so. And I think if you just free the market, let the people create businesses, let them employ.
Lovely. Absolutely.
And unfortunately, it won't create equality, but it will create jobs, and it will create much more wealth. Like America, for example, is like the bastion of freedom. You guys are fucking up at the moment, Dylan. I'm sorry. But, you know, okay, I'm not gonna... Sorry. No, I think America got it right there, you know, a little bit, because the free market capitalism has objectively brought more people out of abject poverty than any other system ever.
Definitely.
But in America and in the West, unfortunately, there's this degradation of values. Right, of family values, principles, ethics, and all of this, and this is creating. We're going into Karl Marx's fucking nightmare again. Sorry for swearing.
No, it's all right. Note for all, this is a no holds bar podcast, so if you want to swear, by all means. But another thing is entrepreneurship. You know, I did a podcast a few weeks ago on Bitcoin. Now, yes, and Dylan, I think you guys also did a podcast with Ricky about Bitcoin.
That's correct.
And it was an awesome podcast. Ricky, I've subscribed to his email as well. Every day he sends emails and I read a bit. But I think Bitcoin, it's gambling, I know. But Bitcoin could also set that benchmark where you can get a couple of bob together, cash it out, and then open something where you can say, right, hey, entrepreneurship, you know, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to employ people. That's a start, but that's not happening. I mean, government is closing down these corporations. I mean, Triple M was one of them. They got closed down. And today I spoke to a guy. There was a company called Global Trading, also with cryptocurrency. And, you know, government also shut their company down. The NDR is also behind this. I mean, we are trying to do things. We're trying to do things to make money, but we're getting blocked.
At every turn.
At every turn, we're getting blocked.
Yeah, and you touched on something, Wesley, about the how everything's all centralized in South Africa. The whole conversation is on what can the government do to fix this. Cyril Ramaphosa's last State of the Nation, or as I prefer to say, the State of the Nations address in South Africa, his whole was about how we need I think the exact term was an ethical and competent developmental state.
Oh my God.
It's all top down. Like, that was one of his core 7 key principles. Like, we just need the government to do more. Like, exactly. We just need basically keep doing what we're doing, but just do it better, you know? And things that you're talking about in terms of all these interventions. For instance, I was reading an article maybe a couple of weeks ago about the effects of the minimum wage on domestic workers. And thousands of them have been laid off recently. Yeah. Now, yeah, I mean, it's not a ton of money, but you can't say that 0 is better than 3,500 Rand or whatever it was they were getting for these people. You know, I mean, the real minimum wage is and always has been 0. So, I mean, anything better than that is obviously an improvement. And like what you're saying, these things that get in the way of entrepreneurship and small business, those are big challenges in South Africa, particularly. I know a guy who he does welding and fabrication. Yeah. The things he was trying to get started and whatnot. Thankfully, he's doing better now because he went into a different direction. But he couldn't get any large clients. They're like, all right, cool, we'd like to do business with you, but he didn't have enough turnover to qualify for a VAT number. Jeez. And because of that, he couldn't. They're like, well, if you don't have a VAT number, then we can't. Yeah,
and if your company isn't BEE compliant and all of this, you get penalized. You get penalized for this, penalized for that.
Yeah, and particularly here in the Western Cape, that makes absolutely 0 sense. I mean, just with the demographics being what they are. I mean, being BEE compliant in like Veltrif, you know, out in the middle of a small ass town here in the Western Cape. I mean, that's not feasible, you know. It's just ridiculous. It's like government is consciously anti-business.
Yes, and they think this is the well, I don't know, they can't be this stupid. I refuse to believe that they're this stupid. I think people are also, you know, have the will to power, and I think power is a drug. Like, I think it's a terrible drug, which is another reason why I advocate for the smallest government possible. Because if people are addicted to power, why would you centralize all power into a few minority people? And it's just, to me, it doesn't make sense. Sorry. I just wanted to carry on there with the point that you were making, Dillion. I have a very, I'm sorry to say it, but I've got quite a nihilistic viewpoint on the South African economy at the moment, because our government, they say, okay, well, you know, if we need, this is what we need to do. We need to now, let's say they go through compensation, expropriation without compensation, and then that won't work. And then they'll say, yes, but then what we need is the banks. And then they'll get the banks. Okay, yes, but what we need is, and it's always, the answer is always more power in the government's hands. And it's obviously what's killing everything. And I'm sorry to say this, lads, and I hope you can change my mind about this, but to me at this point, I feel it's almost irreversible. I don't know how to go back on this.
We're so deep in it at the moment. I mean, just by saying that the government wants the Reserve Bank to get the power to print money. Whoa, guys, we saw what happened to Venezuela when they did that.
or even closer to home, Zimbabwe. Things get bad, start printing out the currency, and then everything goes downhill from there.
Exactly, downhill completely.
The answer, sorry, Conscious,
yeah, no,
the answer is bigger government, and the answer, I believe, is less government. It really comes down to that for me.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what the government does or doesn't do, I would agree with that. Like I said, I come from sort of I think the government, the state absolutely has a sort of toxic effect on culture, generally speaking. And I think that's particularly true in South Africa. And I think if, the state were to pull back its role and its influence over sort of the public consciousness, that would be a good thing. Worried about is in terms of in a scenario like that is, I think, and this sort of goes back to what we're talking about the other day about protest action and stuff and people tearing shit up. I think society has been so toxified by this point, unfortunately, in a lot of places, that if the government did withdraw, just be like, all right, cool, we read Atlas Shrugged and we're going to be like a benevolent night watchman state. I think there would be a mass reaction to that, violent reaction, because so many people have been this bullshit for years at this point that acts as a blesser to bequeath riches, jobs, and employment, and opportunity to everybody. And people just, I don't know if they'll accept that at large. I mean, on a certain level, they'll have to, because in an environment like that, it's sink or swim. But yeah, man, I just don't know. I think if you unravel a lot of these programs, toxic situation. So when the government, the only thing I'll just say real quick is just when the government does run out of money, and they will, of grant recipients in South Africa, I mean, what's going to happen to them? What are they going to do?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I was thinking roughly about 20 million people did not cast their vote in this last election. And the Renegade report also touched a bit on it. And, these are the people that have got these social grants, got the RDP houses. I think, my feeling is if they go against the party that brought them this stuff, they're going to lose it. I think that's their fear. They've got this fear, I'm going to lose my grant, I'm going to lose my RDP house. Wesley, am I wrong there?
Well, no, I mean, like everyone, I think everyone is scared at this point. We all have fear. And the problem is that, everyone expects the government to fix it. And, we were talking about this utopianism, and it's funny that Dillion brought up Atlas Shrugged and Ayn Rand, because I really think that would be my sort of kind of utopia. But then again, it's ironic because I think utopias don't exist. So it's So I agree on that. This is difficult. What was the question again, Jason? Sorry.
About
social grants, I think.
About social grants, about people not wanting to cast their vote because they're scared they're going to lose, their grants.
Yeah, but I mean, okay. So what is the percentage of South Africans paying taxes? It's way less than, I think, 15%.
Yes, it's like last I heard was 2 million taxpayers. I don't know. I could be wrong.
We should someone should check that up, because now you have, let's say you've got 8 million taxpayers, 9 million or 10 million taxpayers. You've got 20 million people on social grants. SEOs are losing billions. Oh. They've lost how many billions in the last 2 years?
Oh, billions,
and we have the brain drain happening. Everyone who is able and capable is leaving. Everyone we need to stay here to fix the country is leaving.
Is leaving, yeah.
the money is going, the brains are going. And no, we're in trouble. And this is why I said that I have quite a nihilistic point of view toward the country, which I know isn't good. And I don't know, Karl Marx, he had this idea that, the natural order would be that communism would come out of the collapse of capitalism. But I almost think that capitalism, or let's say the free market, which sounds nicer, would sort of maybe give rise out of, or come out of, the collapse of communism. And I mean, and that's quite a doomsday statement to make, because that means that everything has to collapse for that to happen. And that's bleak, and I don't want to be that bleak.
Well, the big question is, Joe, what are you doing about it? What are we doing about it? I can proudly say I'm doing something about it. I mean, I'm in the security industry, so I employ car guards, and it's not just about employing car guards to look after cars. I have my parades and I have my training sessions, and the training sessions is very, very important, because this is where I teach a lot of my car guards morality, ethics, discipline. Then I teach them about customer service, how to greet your customer. And this is what's not happening. A lot of people that apply for a job, that when they bring a CV, what is it to produce on the CV? Not much. But then he says to you, but I'm willing to learn. And when I hear those words, I'm willing to learn, then I humble myself and I say, you know what? Then that's what's going to happen. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to train you to become somebody. Obviously, and as this has happened to lots of my car guards, they've left and they've gone for greener pastures and they've got better jobs, and some of them have actually got promoted and they've become supervisors. I've had two of my ex-car guards that phone me and say, thank you, Mr. Jason, thank you for what you've done. And I say, what have I done? Through you, sir, through your training, and I've adapted it and I've brought it across into my workplace where I'm working, and now I'm a supervisor. And that is awesome. So that's what I'm doing from my side. Can I ask, what are you guys doing from your side?
Oh man. Yeah, and you see, this is the point, and I think this is again, I come from sort of a Eastern Orthodox perspective in terms of sort of morality and how I orient my worldview. And the church historically has always placed a huge emphasis on the responsibility of the individual, or anyone, to sort of make the world around them better. There's this idea called theosis, where humanity, obviously we don't become God, but we become more like in the image of God, basically. And what is that? That is benevolence, that is kindness, that is charity, that is also equipping people to care of themselves, as even our heathen friend Wesley may have heard, the give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, and he'll eat for the rest of his life, right? I mean, there's a reason why everyone knows that. It's because it makes sense. It's true. Yeah, exactly.
Wesley?
Yeah, I mean, I've been thinking myself about sort of what I can do, and one of the things I'm kind of doing right now is I've recently sort of gotten involved with sort of the church organization that I'm in, and I'm looking at possibly not employment, it's sort of a job training stuff. Absolutely. Specifically sort of in the Cape Flats. So there's this one organization that I think it's called Beautiful Life, which is involved in down and out people, not drug addicts or whatever, but people who are like, I want to sort of get my life on track and I just need help to do it. And so they're kind of discerning, kind of discriminating in exactly who they let into the program. But it's like, okay,
Oh, that's awesome.
And we'll give you a hand up.
That's awesome.
But yes. And even, people I know, like one of the, like my father-in-law, he's a retired pensioner, doesn't have a lot of material resources, but one of the things he does every Sunday is he'll go and visit people in the hospital, and he's able to sort of make these connections and encourage these young guys who are in its specific ward that he goes to, they're paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
Guy who sort of leads our Bible study group, he's a business owner here in Cape Town, and he provides. He's sort of like you, Jason. You know, he's got a business, and where he sees people who, you know, show. I think that's the main thing. People need to show that they
are keen,
better themselves.
Yeah,
exactly. They're like, look, you know, I want a leg up. I mean, I need a hand up, not a handout, basically. Like I'm trying, what I'm doing, what has been going on hasn't, you know, been helping. And I would appreciate assistance to help me change my life.
True.
So then you're facilitating something that someone's already trying to do, instead of, you know, just
true
cases enabling bad behavior.
You know, the main thing is, a lot of us, you know, that's got money, that's got what good jobs in it. We tend to throw the superior side of us, which is wrong. I mean, I told Wesley last night this. I mean, in the position that I am, I'm a manager. I don't want to show people that I'm better than them. By any means, I'm not better than nobody. I just want people to respect me for the position that I am. That I'm there to carry out the duties and the responsibilities and the rules and procedures. You know, we lack that. We need to fall away from being superior to the inferior. That shouldn't exist, because a lot of the people that's on social media, you know, your trolls and that, this is the thing that they focus on. They focus on, you come from a white background, apartheid background, so you superior, you the boss in it. Bullshit. No one's the boss. We all here to do something for the community, and that's what I'm doing. I'm doing something for the community. Wesley?
Well, okay. Well, first of all, I think both of you gave very honorable answers there, and yeah, you're putting this heathen to shame.
No, man.
Well, I don't have any answers like that, to be honest. Geez, yeah. I guess I'm trying to sort out my own life at the moment. But I guess that's also not really an excuse. I've just been trying to put a magnifying glass over everything that's happening, and just trying to really understand why things are happening the way they are, and where it's going, and what are the causes, and so on. And basically maybe try and speak to people and warn them, I guess. But yeah, I get, and when it comes to charity and that, yes, I'm very much lacking in that area. Heathen detected.
No,
Heathen
man.
detected.
No, man.
Well,
Dude.
you know, I'll say this. Is that sort of, you know, as I kind of got older and kind of figured out my own sort of worldview and sort of what's my place in all this, what's my sort of obligations to my fellow man. This is a relatively new thing, because I wasn't always as I am now. You know, I was kind of just a lazy river sort of deist for a long time, essentially. And then, you know, I get married, I'm starting a family, and, you know, I less become who I'm essentially going to be for the rest of my life in certain ways. And, you know, sort of once you sort of got that surety and you're grounded and whatnot, you know, then you kind of know sort of a plan of action. So, you know, it's never, I guess, sort of one of those things. It's never too late to start, but, you know, don't beat yourself up too much while you're trying to figure stuff out. And I'd say that to everybody out there, you know,
True.
Find what you
Thank
can
you.
do. Try and understand, you know, sort of what's your place in the world. And then kind of like what you're saying with Wesley, I sort of have my criticisms of Jordan Peterson in some regards. Yeah, Jordan Peterson, that could be a word. But he is sort of touching on something, and I think you're picking up on the importance of, you know, the world isn't all just supply and demand curves, right? It's not there's more to life than low taxes and free markets, you know?
Sure, yes. Meaning.
Yeah, exactly.
Meaning gives purpose to life.
Exactly. And
all purpose gives meaning to life, sorry.
Yes, and understanding sort of who we are as people and what we if any, we have, and sort of all that sort of stuff. So, getting into the ethics side of it, and even, a theological angle.
But that's exactly
where that
it.
stuff comes in.
We need to start with that. Each of us we can go out there and make a difference. And stop this and try and get this poverty thing under control. I don't know. I don't know which direction we go. We want to start businesses. There's a lot of us who want to start businesses. I tried myself. I was telling Wesley last night, he's into advertising, making adverts in it, and I wanted to go in the same field.
Make propaganda.
Yeah.
Propaganda.
No. But I start a business, man. I don't want to be in the field that I am for the rest of my life. I want to chill down with something else. But the economy, the way it is at the moment, there's just people are not interested. When you tell them, look, I want to make an advert, they say, yeah, money's a bit tight now, and I can't help you now. And then I get despondent. So yeah, so I'm looking for new measures to try and keep myself positive, because I promised myself, and I had a podcast with a guy named Adrian, and I promised him that this year I want to be positive, because this last few years I've been negative, and being negative, it just brings you down.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree with that. And I always, I kind of criticize the sort of sarcastic sort of Ben Shapiro mentality, where you just sort of sneer at everything. You're like, all right, really, New York Times, really, we have trans kids now, really, and then you're just outraged by everything, but there's no game plan,
No game plan.
So I think what you're talking about, Jason, having that, and it's not about changing the world. It's about changing your world.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So the little sphere of your life that you can control, and the people that come and go, either on the periphery or the people within your circle, that's where the real living's to be had. And that's where you can really make a powerful difference, So, yeah, I'm kind of with Wesley on this one. I think in terms of the big picture stuff, right? I think things are probably going to get worse. It might just peter out, and South Africa will break into, a dozen different little pieces. I don't know. But
you mean balkanization?
Yeah, balkanization. Yes. But in terms of and Kate Party, go for it. But in terms of life, you shouldn't sort of base sort of how you do things and whatnot based on where the GDP is going.
Minus 3.2.
Yeah, it's not exactly a pretty picture, but try and hedge yourself against that. There are steps you can make, and when you sort of biggest problems that I've had sort of in my life is kind of, and I think I too was a libertarian for quite a while, and I still have some sympathies for it, but I'm an individual. I do my own thing, but when you sort of have a more of an identity that you're associated with, which is beyond you, right? Now I'm Dillion, but I'm more than that. I'm also a husband. I'm going to be a dad soon.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome.
I'm a member of my church and whatnot. I'm a member of community of believers. I have sort of roots at that point. And then when you're not just relying on yourself around you that you can trust and rely upon, then things don't look so bad.
Yeah. Wesley, any last words? I think we're going to wrap this up. Yeah.
No, I think it's quite wise. And I'm very grateful for this conversation. There's a lot of that Dillion said that I agree with. There's maybe some things I don't. But I think that's actually probably a good message to end on, because I don't want to bring any more negativity into it. That's a good message to end on.
100%.
0.2% contraction. Don't want to end on that.
I'm gonna put the links in of your podcast, Dillion, onto my description. Is that fine with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
man.
So listeners out there, go on to Dillion's podcast with Dillion Scott, and who's your other friend? Russell, yeah. What's it? Reactionary Opinions. Awesome stuff that the guys are doing. And Wesley, your channel too. I'm gonna put your link in also. TheBurnZA. Byrne also speaks. Well, Wesley also speaks about philosophical. Help me, guys. Byrne, I can't pronounce the word now. Philosophical, yeah. Sorry. And also, Wesley's got this Discord channel that we're on now at the moment. Can you see it there? Well, okay. Well, Colosseum.
Oh yes. Can I plug it quickly?
Plug the link quickly because I'm gonna copy. But make sure that it's not set to expire. Eh?
Okay,
it mustn't expire because when I clicked on it, it showed expired. Yeah.
I'll send you a link that doesn't expire.
That doesn't expire.
This is a Discord channel with a bunch of channels, and I invite anyone to come onto this channel and just have conversations with people that you don't know. You can discuss certain topics, anything. If you don't like what it's about, you can go to the next channel, or you can just leave. Or yeah, and I would really encourage you to just take part in dialogue with people and have interesting conversations like this, because it is priceless.
I mean last night, Wesley, we chat, me, you and France, we had a chat for 3 hours last night, eh?
Yes, on this channel, and we'll make it open. Anyone can join. It's, I would say, free speech, open, and yes, let's get the conversation going and come up with solutions and have
Okay, Dillion, Wesley, don't go. I'm gonna just quickly greet, just give my closing. But I just want to say, Dillion, thank you very much. Thank you for joining on this podcast. You have been absolute awesome. Wesley, you too, my man. Absolute pleasure. You guys have both been awesome. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay. Guys, my podcast is available on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Pocket Cast. There's 11 platforms that on. This podcast is available in Anchor FM. And on Monday, the same time, I'll be uploading this podcast on Anchor FM and on YouTube. Stay tuned, Monday, 11 o'clock. Guys, lekker. Cheers. Bye-bye.